about 20 years late.
Yeah, it's usually the record anyway.
The good ones, too.
So, as far as time, I know it's been a very long film. I'm going to keep my questions to a bare minimum, and we'll definitely be fielding questions from the audience. I should also introduce our last-minute guest, Paul Jones. One of the makeup artists at Image Animation, responsible for Hellraiser, Nightbreed, among many other things, and now you are currently working in Toronto as well. Some of the films that you've worked on recently, if I'm correct, you just completed, the new Silent Hill film, Silent Hill 2, among many other things. But we're very pleased to have him here tonight for the Cabal cut. So I guess we should start off with the most obvious question. You know, the film came out 22 years ago, kind of became a cult favorite, and now there's a much bigger audience. I guess I'll ask all three of you to give me your take. Why do you think this film has such a longevity? We'll start with Paul and work our way down.
Oh boy, for me it's just nostalgia. I mean, you know, seeing it again, I haven't seen it in 15 years. I have to say that if I built stuff like that now, my kids would starve. I mean, it's fun to see, but holy crap, we got away with miracles back then. It was crazy because some of the stuff we built was literally, we built it on a weekend just for our own portfolios as like a hobby. And then Bob would say, that's great, let's stick it in the movie. And like, so much of that stuff was never meant to be in the movie. It was just stuff that people made for fun, they brought it in. It was, we need another creature, quick, stick it on the head. And that was I'd say about a third of the stuff you saw was whipped up last minute. A lot of the stuff obviously was built ahead of time, but yeah, it's been crazy. But yeah, for me it's, I mean, I can't be objective, you know, I worked on the bloody thing, so it's, that's all I'm going to tell you.
That works for me. Russell, why do you think the film has such long legs?
Well, I think its subject matter is more relevant today than it was when it was made 22 years ago. I think the world's evolved, and I think, you know, you can see, you know, in Clive, homosexual writer, all the notions of otherness, you know, in the world. And I think that the themes are really important that, you know, he was working on. And I just feel that the film needs to be seen in this format, and it needs to be properly restored. And I think that that's the really important thing about seeing it 22 years later. And also that it's a much different film. Do you guys think it was different than the other one?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously the ones that stuck around thought it was better. The other ones that left didn't. Who knows? Anyway, I'll pass over to Mark.
I think what you touched on is exactly why the film prevails after all this time. It's what the film is saying. You know, it's about the people that condemn us who end up being, you know, hypocrites. And I think that's something that will always be true, unfortunately. But I mean, you know, aside from all that stuff, it's also a pretty badass movie.
I was going to say it's because I like the monsters. Those are much better answers. Now, one of the things we've noticed in watching this cut tonight, one of the things that you have done in going back to the material is dubbing in the voice of Doug Bradley. For many who may not remember, with the original cut of the film, a German actor was hired to dub in the dialogue to give him an authentic German accent. But you guys went back and actually got Doug to do, well, basically his voice work all over again. How did that happen?
Basically, we had no money because no one gave us any money, so the university I work at, I paid for him to come and give a guest lecture. And then I paid a recording studio, and so when Hellraiser was on, we jumped in a taxi, went to a recording studio, I had it all set up and we dubbed it, and then I took him back to do the Q&A. And please don't tell the university, but they paid for Doug Bradley to dub it, right? Because no one was giving us any money, and we were doing this because it was love and we wanted people to see it. But he, you know, he's as enthusiastic as everybody. He tells everybody about it at horror conventions. He says there's a much more fantastic movie you could watch. And he's seen it and he's supportive, so that's great. I mean, I thought it was really important. You know, the reason that some of the actors got dubbed was because the studio wouldn't pay for them to fly to Los Angeles. So that's why that happened, and it was that simple. There was a German actor hanging around that could dub that voice, and that's what they did to it. And that's how soulless film studios can be. So it's a shame.
Well, it's, I mean, it's interesting as well, and this is more of an observation than a question. Watching the film and going between, you know, the theatrical cut and the found footage, I had no idea that Catherine Chevalier was actually dubbed as well. I was actually very surprised by that.
And she's a little bit harder to find, so yeah.
Right.
So I've been trying to find her, and I want to find everybody, because the piece of news that me and Mark can share with you is that we're going, you know, we're pretty sure now that we're going to make a 90-minute feature documentary about Nightbreed from the beginning all the way through to it being seen by audiences again. And we want to interview everybody, you know, all the special effects crew. We want to interview all the actors, and we want to make them all part of the process. I mean, before I left for this trip, I had lunch with Oliver Parker Pellegrin, with Nick Vince, with Hugh Ross, Narcisse, and Doug Bradley, and they basically said, you know, they'll do anything for this film, you know, for it to be seen properly. So, I mean, all the people involved, and I guess Paul's the same, and everybody, you know, knew there was a much better movie lurking around in there, something that was more succinct, which was a little bit more Clive Barker as Clive Barker developed. And you know, yeah, sure, there's nothing wrong with Nightbreed, and when it gets re-released, I'd like Nightbreed and the Cabal cut fully restored with absolutely amazing picture qualities to sit side by side on Blu-rays. You know, a little bit like the Blade Runner one, where you can see the different versions and you get the documentary and you get actually, you can make up your own mind what you actually want to see. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and due to the overwhelming response regarding the film, Morgan Creek has given us permission to use footage and photos from the film to put into the documentary, which usually costs a pretty penny. But,
Yeah.
So we're excited about that.
Well, it definitely seems to be chugging along. I'm going to throw in one more question. Well, actually, this is something that I learned from Paul. Paul actually acted in the movie as well. Would you like to tell everybody about your performance in the film?
Well, I'd like to say I was the only effects guy to put on a monster suit, but pretty much if you weren't sculpting something, you weren't molding something, you were on bloody set putting a suit on. When Babette shows the kind of the past of Nightbreed, there's like a werewolf tied to a big wheel and he's being tortured. That was me. And I think my hands are inside Berserker gloves at least 5 times in that bloody movie. The worst day I've ever had on a movie set still is when we had all these extras come in to play Berserkers. I built the Berserkers, but it was one of my jobs on the movie. They all came in, they sat around all day in these costumes, sweating their ass off. Didn't get anything shot, so we took them all out, sent them all home. 5 minutes later, one of the ADs comes running in and says, "We need to shoot a scene with the Berserkers." We sent all the guys home. "Well, you guys have to get in the suits, we need to shoot it now." So we had to climb into these sweaty, horrible suits and walk on set and stand there, and they still didn't use us. So yeah, you can't even do that now, it's against actual law. But there you go.
I mean, most of the creatures and things were just people that turned up for the day and they were made up, and that's why there was such a wide variety of them, isn't there? So we actually see, you know, so many, you know, there's so many that are hiding in the background or unused, and you know, I found so many photographs, and you know, I've sent them to crew and said, "What was this character called?" And I said, "I don't know, that person just turned up on that day," you know, and they were made up and things happened, and that's what's so fantastic about this. I mean, there are more creatures in this movie than anything else. You know, if you added everybody up, it's just absolutely wonderful, the amount that you actually see. And yeah, we fall in love with some of them, you know. We fall in love with Pelican, don't we? He's so badass. Yeah. He's such a great character. Yeah, you're meat for the beast. He's just great, yeah. So anyway, let's throw it open, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with you right in the front.
Yes, well, first of all, I gotta say, yeah, okay, here we go. First of all, I mean, I think you deserve a big round of applause, Mark and Russell, for getting the ball rolling on putting the footage back together. Like, fantastic. You know, thank you so much for the film I'm sure we all love here, and it kicks butt.
It was our pleasure. Really, we just wanted to see it. You know? It was all selfishly motivated.
And only I did, but I guess there was more. But anyway, And oh, by the way, I also signed your petition on Occupy Media. So just
Thank you very much.
Anyway, my question is, when hopefully, I assume that you're still constantly restoring it, dubbing it, mixing it, and all that jazz. And anyway, before...
This is version 5.
Yeah, and before, like, Morgan Creek officially releases, like, DVD, Blu-ray, what have you, how much longer do you think it's going to take before it's going to be just pristine and fresh as the day it was born?
Where we are at the moment is that we can do... Led Zeppelin made a DVD about 7 years ago, and they had shitty VHSs, a bit like what we got. And there's a process that you can do to restore them, where you can bake them, and basically you can play them once. And what the outcome of that is that you get the highest quality reproduction from those VHSs, and it's about 70% better than the VHS looks now. So it's a little bit less than when you see the DVD, but it's not far away. Now that's going to cost us 10 to 15,000 UK pounds, so about 25,000 US dollars. And that's what I want to do, and take it through a proper grade and work with that. Now, if that's all we ever achieve, I can live with that because it's going to look great. If by some miracle of the work that we do every single day, we find the original film footage, with Robin Vision, I'd like to re-telecine it, and I'd like to do it that way. You know, I'm a filmmaker, you know, I work with film, that's what I'd like to do. But everybody tells us at every juncture that film is lost. Now, we don't believe it's lost, Clive doesn't believe it's lost. We think it's a bit like Raiders of the Lost Ark, yeah? You know, we need to get there, and we need to go through that warehouse with a fine-tooth comb, and we need to find it. And we actually at this stage where we don't want them to do a thing. We want it ourselves, we want to take it away, we want to supervise it ourselves. We just want either a budget to come from somewhere. You know, we're happy to raise the money, but at the same time, the only people that are going to release it are Morgan Creek at the moment, and they're going to make all the money, and we're going to do all the work. But we've done all the work so far, so I think that we want to continue. So our goal is for it to be as pristine as possible, right, and the worst case scenario is that it'll look an awful lot better than now, but money needs to be involved in that. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Great question.
We have time for one more question.
One more.
Wow. But we will be in the lobby, and you can ask whatever you like.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the, like I noticed that there's a lot of stop motion animation done during the film, and I wanted to ask about that.
All the stop motion was, the creatures were built by us in the workshop, and a guy named Rory Fellows did all the stop motion animation. He also animated all Chenard's kind of tentacle fingers in Hellraiser 2. So, yeah, he was a really nice guy. It was weird to see stop motion, because even back then it was considered kind of antiquated, but Clive was like, no, some of these creatures, the only way we can get them is to do stop motion. We even had like flying creatures, and like they all looked about 12 inches long, even when they weren't supposed to be. That was the problem, because they were. It's, again, I can't be objective because I've molded these things, I've painted these things. It's like, you know. But yeah, it was nice. It was nice to see it again after all these years.
It was really important to me to put them in, you know, because I wanted to see them. Yeah, and they look hokey. Yeah, you can't get away from that. They look very Harryhausen-esque, but I guess that was what Clive wanted. Yeah, so they look wonderful. You know, the one where the woman's riding the beast towards the end. You know, that was one of the highlights for me of the discoveries, to actually see that and to be able to put it in. Really, it was great. Every one of the creatures was a revelation when you're actually watching it and seeing it for the first time. I hope it was for you guys tonight, seeing them. I hope it gave it a sort of quaint charm, just like watching King Kong.
I have one question. Who else knows about Occupy Midian? Oh, fantastic. All right, everyone that's not raising their hand, talk to people that are raising their hand. Let's make this happen.
I've got a question for Ron.
Yes.
Right, which pop star nearly played Laurie's friend in that movie?
It's a Clive art.
Yeah, and but she never actually did it, so she was replaced, and the one that she falls in love with Cronenberg and gets killed.
That would be Susie Quattro.
Very good. Okay, well, he did really well. Okay. And which 80s pop star nearly played Ashbury?
Ooh, that's a good one, actually. Ashbury. I'm going to say Mark Almond.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, he is the Clive Barker expert. Well done.
I have my moments. Okay, so we're getting the wrap-up signal here. I would like to thank everybody who came out to our first screening at TIFF Lightbox, and thank you all for your patience as well. We had a couple of rough spots, but you've all been really cool. So Roomwork thanks you, and our guests thank you, and the Tribes of the Moon thank you. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good night. Thanks for coming out.